Throughout history, maps have been used to record newly discovered lands, define borders, and even claim entire domains. However, among the countless islands, mountains, and oceans charted by explorers, one stands out not for its presence, but for its disappearance. Bermeja Island, recorded on maps since the 16th century, simply vanished. Ancient documents, nautical records, and expeditions indicated its existence about 100 kilometers off the coast of Yucatan, Mexico, but when modern researchers tried to find it, there was nothing but open sea. What could explain the disappearance of an island that had existed for centuries on official maps? Could it have been a cartographic error perpetuated over generations, a poorly understood geological phenomenon, or something much more sinister? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube recommend the videos to more people and allowing me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get to the video. Imagine opening an ancient map and finding an island that has been there for centuries, recorded by explorers, documented by renowned cartographers. But when you try to find it today, it simply doesn't exist. No sign, no trace, nothing. That's exactly what happened with Bermeja Island, a piece of land that had appeared on maps since the 16th century, but suddenly vanished from the ocean. How could something like this happen? The first mention of Bermeja Island came from Spanish navigators exploring the Gulf of Mexico. On maps, it appeared as a reddish spot, which justified its name, Bermejo, meaning reddish in Spanish. Its location was well defined, about 100 kilometers north of the Yucatan Peninsula. But here's the strange part. For centuries, no one seemed to question whether this island was real or not. Various maps from different periods continued to mark the existence of Bermeja. The cartographer Alonso de Santa Cruz recorded it in his nautical charts in the 16th century. In the 18th century, Antonio de Alzate, an important Mexican hydrographer, did the same. In other words, the island wasn't just a mere invention, it was part of the official cartography of the time. But if it truly existed, why was there no record of a landing? What makes this case even more intriguing is that the island wasn't just a random point in the ocean. It played a significant strategic role. To understand this, we need to talk about the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. Basically, each country has the right to economically exploit the waters within a radius of up to 370 kilometers from its coast. However, if a country has an island beyond that limit, it can expand its EEZ. This means more resources, more territory, and most importantly, more oil. Now things start to get strange. If Bermeja existed, Mexico would have a larger share of the Gulf of Mexico, an area with billions of dollars in oil reserves. But if the island disappeared, this territory would become disputed, and guess who would benefit the most? The United States. Everything seemed normal until the late 20th century, when the first modern expeditions set out to locate Bermeja. After all, with all the available technology, confirming its existence should have been easy. But that's not what happened. In 1997, Mexico's National Institute of Geography sent a team to the coordinates where the island was supposed to be. The result? Nothing. Just water. And here comes the inevitable question. How can an island disappear without a trace? The first explanation offered was a cartographic error. Perhaps for centuries, maps had been wrong, and navigators simply copied a mistake without realizing it. But if that were the case, why hadn't anyone noticed before? And why did the island continue to appear on official maps until just a few years ago? Another hypothesis was natural erosion. Some islands, particularly sandbanks, can break apart over time and sink into the sea. But this theory was quickly dismissed. Bathymetric studies, which analyzed the ocean floor's topography, found no traces of a submerged island. If Bermeja had sunk, something should have been there at the bottom. But there was nothing. And then, something even more suspicious happened. As this controversy grew, more recent versions of maps began to erase the island. Without any official explanation, Bermeja simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there. Doesn't that raise even more questions? Now here's the detail that makes everything even stranger. The disappearance of Bermeja happened precisely when Mexico and the United States were renegotiating control over oil-rich areas in the Gulf. If the island still existed, Mexico would have had a much greater claim over these resources. But with Bermeja erased from maps, this part of the ocean became contested territory. So, what really happened to Bermeja Island? Was it just a navigational mistake perpetuated over centuries? An unknown geological phenomenon? Or did someone want this island to disappear forever? By now, you must be wondering, if Bermeja Island appeared on maps for centuries, was recorded by respected cartographers, and played such an important role in Mexico's geopolitics, then when and how did it disappear? This is the strangest part of the story, because no one knows. There is no exact year, no documented event, not even a reliable account of its disappearance. One day, when someone decided to look for it, it was simply no longer there. It was in the late 20th century that the first modern attempts to locate the island emerged. In 1997, Mexico's National Institute of Geography decided to verify once and for all if Bermeja was real. An expedition was sent to the coordinates where the island was supposed to be. The expectation was simple. They would confirm its existence and resolve any doubts about its location. But when the researchers arrived at the designated point, there was nothing. Just open ocean, no islands, no sandbanks, no signs of solid ground. This discovery was a shock. After all, if the island never existed, how did it remain on maps for over 400 years? To try to clarify the mystery, a second expedition was organized, this time using more advanced technology, including satellite images and underwater scans. The result was the same. No trace of Bermeja, no submerged structure, no indication that an island had ever been there. The first explanation offered for this was the so-called sustained cartographic error. The idea was simple. Maybe an ancient map mistakenly marked an island, and other cartographers simply copied the mistake over the centuries. It may sound plausible, but this theory has major flaws. First, because different maps from distinct periods confirmed Bermeja's existence without question. Second, if it were an error, it would have been corrected much earlier, when navigation became more precise. Then came the second hypothesis: the island might have sunk. Some island formations, such as volcanic islands or sandbanks, can be swallowed by the sea over time. But this idea also doesn't hold up. That's because if Bermeja had sunk, there would be signs of it on the ocean floor. Yet, when scientists conducted bathymetric analyses, studies of the underwater landscape, they found nothing. The seabed in that region is deep and completely smooth, as if the island had never existed. And this is where things get even stranger. In the early 2000s, while Mexico and the United States were negotiating exploration rights in the Gulf of Mexico, official maps quietly began removing Bermeja. No explanation, no official statement. An island that had existed for centuries simply vanished from government records. Now think about this. If Bermeja never existed, why did it take so long for maps to erase it? And more importantly, why did its disappearance happen precisely when Mexico was disputing a maritime territory rich in oil? Which brings us to the most controversial hypothesis. What if the island was deliberately erased? Many believe that Bermeja not only existed, but that someone made sure to eliminate it from history. But how could that have been done? An entire island cannot simply be destroyed overnight, or can it? If you think this sounds like a conspiracy theory, wait until you hear what some investigations revealed. Some believe the island may have been intentionally submerged. This could have been done using underwater explosives, a forced geological collapse, or even advanced technologies to manipulate the environment. Could it be possible? There are records of military experiments capable of altering the ocean floor. But who would have that power? Another theory suggests something even stranger. What if Bermeja was never a normal island? If it was just a sandbank or an artificial structure, it could have been removed without leaving much trace. Or worse, what if the island was something that was never meant to be discovered? The disappearance of Bermeja was not a simple navigation error. It was not a known natural phenomenon, and it was definitely not a coincidence. So, what really happened to this island? If history has taught us anything, it's that no territory disappears without reason, especially when it involves natural resources and geopolitical disputes. And when it comes to Bermeja Island, there's one detail that cannot be ignored. If it existed, Mexico would have had the right to claim a much larger portion of the oil reserves in the Gulf of Mexico. But without it, this area became disputed. And guess who benefited the most? The United States. To understand this issue, we need to talk about the exclusive economic zone, EEZ. According to international maritime law, a country has control over natural resources found within a 370-kilometer radius from its coast. But if that country has an island beyond that limit, its EEZ can be expanded even further. And this is exactly where Bermeja fits into the story. If the island still existed, Mexico would have sovereignty over a massive portion of the Gulf of Mexico. This area contains vast deposits of oil and natural gas worth billions of dollars. But without Bermeja, this slice of the ocean fell outside Mexico's reach and became a disputed territory. Guess who stepped in to claim their share? That's right, the United States. And don't think this is just speculation. This dispute became evident in 2000 when the two countries signed the Hoyo de Dona Treaty, an agreement to divide this region of the Gulf. In practice, the treaty allowed American companies to freely exploit resources in an area that, if Bermeja existed, would have belonged to Mexico. In other words, the disappearance of the island directly altered maritime borders and ensured that the U.S. gained access to resources it otherwise never would have. At this point, the question that needs to be asked is, was it just a coincidence that Bermeja disappeared right before these negotiations? The Mexican government realized something was wrong and, in 2008, tried to settle the matter once and for all. The Mexican Senate demanded a new investigation to determine whether Bermeja had truly disappeared or if it had never existed. And this is where things got even stranger. An expedition was sent to the location where, according to historical maps, the island should have been. Once again, nothing was found. No elevation on the ocean floor, no sign of submerged land. The official explanation? Cartographic error. But this conclusion didn't convince many people, because if it was just an error, why did it take centuries to be noticed? And more importantly, why did official maps keep the island until the late 1990s, precisely when the US and Mexico were renegotiating the Gulf's exploration rights? This led some investigators to consider a darker hypothesis. Could the island have been deliberately destroyed? If this idea sounds extreme, remember that the United States has a history of interventions to protect its economic and strategic interests. Covert operations, geopolitical manipulation, influence over foreign governments. These tactics have been used before, so why not here? Some theories suggest that the US may have physically eliminated the island using advanced military technology. Underwater detonations could have destroyed any existing rock formation. Another possibility is that experiments were conducted to alter the region's geography, erasing any evidence that Bermeja was ever there. But could this really have been done without leaving traces? An even bolder theory suggests that Bermeja was never a regular island, but an artificial structure or a secret base that was removed as soon as it became a problem for US interests. The lack of any trace of the island on the ocean floor might indicate that it was never really made of rock and sand, but rather something built and later dismantled. The fact is that Bermeja Island's disappearance benefited only one side. Mexico lost territory and access to valuable resources, while the US secured its presence in the Gulf without having to dispute maritime boundaries. This may not be definitive proof of a conspiracy, but it's too much of a coincidence to ignore. And now the question remains, if someone really made Bermeja disappear, how was it done? Secret military technology? Manipulation of historical data? Or something we still don't understand? Conventional explanations were not enough to put an end to the mystery of Bermeja Island. The disappearance of an entire island, without any record of erosion or submersion, is not something common. Geological investigations found no traces of the island on the ocean floor, and modern maps simply erased its existence without a convincing justification. This raised an even more disturbing possibility. Was Bermeja removed using secret technology? Over the last few decades, advancements in military technology have made it possible to manipulate the environment in ways that once seemed like science fiction. One example is the so-called geophysical weapons, which, according to some experts, can alter natural structures, cause earthquakes, or even modify the geography of a specific location. If a small island like Bermeja stood in the way of geopolitical interests, eliminating its presence might have been just a matter of strategy. Military tests in the Gulf of Mexico have been conducted on multiple occasions. Declassified documents reveal that since the Cold War, the the United States has studied ways to modify maritime landscapes to create or destroy strategic points. Reports indicate that during the 1970s, underwater detonations were carried out to test weapons capable of altering submerged geological formations. None of this information points directly to Bermeja, but the fact that these types of tests took place in the same region raises suspicions. One of the most mentioned technologies and theories about geographical manipulation is the use of high-powered underwater explosives. These devices, when detonated at specific points in the ocean, can collapse land formations and make them disappear completely. If Bermeja was a small and fragile island, an attack of this kind could have caused it to sink without leaving traces. But if this happened, who would have authorized such a drastic operation? Studies on geographic camouflage techniques also raise questions about the island's disappearance. Reports indicate that stealth technology, used to hide aircraft and ships from radar, may have been applied in an even more advanced way to conceal entire formations. If Bermeja was a strategic military point, was it removed or merely hidden from satellites? Researchers who have delved deeply into the island's mystery claim that the US government has the technological capability to create invisible zones in certain areas of the ocean. This type of manipulation can be done through electromagnetic interference that affects sensors and satellite images. Digital maps could be altered, historical records modified, and any trace of Bermeja could have been erased before the truth came to light. Another theory that emerged involves a connection to the HAARP project, High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, a highly powerful antenna system that some believe is capable of manipulating the climate and even influencing natural phenomena. If such technology was being tested in the Gulf of Mexico, could it have caused an event that made the island disappear? Secret military tests are also nothing new in the region. On multiple occasions, the United States has conducted classified experiments in the Gulf, many of which have yet to be fully disclosed. Entire maritime areas have been isolated without an official explanation, while naval operations were carried out without the press or local governments having detailed information. If Bermeja was one of these testing sites, could its removal have been a matter of national security? Some investigations suggest that Bermeja may never have been a typical island, but rather a secret military base disguised as an island. Some maritime structures built in strategic locations can be mistaken for islands in low-quality images. If Bermeja was a classified installation, its disappearance might have been a way to shut down a project without leaving evidence. The fact that modern expeditions have failed to locate any trace of the island reinforces the suspicion that some form of technology may have been used to hide it. If it sank naturally, something should be there. If it never existed, why did it remain on maps for centuries? None of these questions have been satisfactorily answered. The only certainty is that the disappearance of Bermeja was not an insignificant accident. Its vanishing directly benefited one of the world's most powerful countries, coincided with billion-dollar oil negotiations, and occurred in a region where secret military tests have already been confirmed. This may not be definitive proof, but when multiple coincidences pile up, can we still call them coincidences? At this point, we have already seen that the disappearance of Bermeja Island was not a simple cartographic error. Its vanishing directly benefited major world powers, coincided with billion-dollar negotiations, and may have involved the use of advanced military technology. But what if the mystery goes even deeper? What if Bermeja was not just an island, but a point of symbolic importance for secret societies? Reports indicate that the island may have held an esoteric significance that made it important to certain occult orders. To understand this possibility, we need to look at the symbolism behind disappeared islands throughout history. From the legendary Atlantis to locations mentioned in ancient texts, mysterious islands have always been associated with hidden knowledge, portals to other realities, or places that needed to be concealed from the world. Bermeja Island appeared on maps for centuries, but there are no detailed records of expeditions that actually reached it. This raises a question: could the island have been a restricted location, accessible only to certain societies? The Freemasons, one of the most influential orders in history, have always used symbols and geographical references to represent concepts of power and wisdom. The disappearance of Bermeja may be linked to an ancient strategy of knowledge concealment. When something needs to be protected, the best way is to make it seem as if it never existed. But what exactly could this island have housed? Another curious connection involves an 18th century Masonic map, found in European archives, which mentions a point in the Gulf of Mexico with characteristics similar to descriptions of Bermeja. The document does not refer to it as an ordinary island, but as a fundamental geographical marker for astronomical calculations and secret navigation. If Bermeja was a place of interest to these orders, its removal from maps may have been much more than just a political matter. It may have been an intentional erasure of a point that contained something that was not meant to be revealed. But what could have been so important? Some theories suggest that the island was an ancient astronomical observation point, used for studies that went beyond the traditional knowledge of the time. In various cultures, isolated islands were chosen for temples and observatories due to their lack of light pollution and terrestrial interference. But if Bermeja really had some special construction or installation, why was it never documented? Other researchers propose the hypothesis that the island housed historical artifacts that were not meant to fall into the wrong hands. This would not be unprecedented in history. For centuries, various secret orders have hidden objects considered powerful or dangerous, such as ancient relics, forbidden texts, or even artifacts from unknown civilizations. If Bermeja held something like this, its disappearance could have been planned to prevent any evidence from coming to light. The connection with occult societies also gains strength when we analyze its coincidence with important political and economic events. The disappearance of Bermeja not only altered maritime borders, but also occurred during a global transition period when governments and corporations were seeking to consolidate control over strategic resources. Secret societies have always had influence behind the scenes of power, so would it be so absurd to think that the island was removed to serve a greater purpose? Amid so many unanswered questions, one thing is certain: Bermeja did not disappear by chance. If its existence was real, its vanishing could have been one of the greatest cover-ups in modern history. But there is still one last piece missing from this puzzle: the most recent expeditions. What did they discover? And is there any chance that someone still knows the truth? After centuries marked on maps and a history surrounded by theories about its disappearance, Bermeja Island remains one of the greatest enigmas of the Gulf of Mexico. But has this mystery truly been solved? Or are there answers that have yet to be revealed to the public? Since the first modern expeditions failed to find the island, numerous investigations have been conducted in an attempt to uncover the truth. Between 2009 and 2010, Mexican researchers conducted a new analysis using the most advanced technology available. High-resolution satellites, underwater drones, and radar scans were used to survey the region where Bermeja was supposed to be. The result was the same: no sign of the island. No submerged structure, no displaced sandbank, nothing. The official explanation remained the same: cartographic error. But this response raised more questions than answers. If Bermeja never existed, why did it take centuries to correct this supposed error? If it was a natural phenomenon, why is there no geological evidence indicating its former presence? The Mexican government's silence on the matter only increased suspicions. In recent years, official documents about the island have become inaccessible to the public. Information about previous expeditions disappeared from archives or was classified. Why so much effort to hide something that supposedly never existed? Some witnesses claim that under certain weather conditions, boats passing through the area report anomalies in navigation instruments. Compasses become disoriented, GPS signals fail, and radar systems experience unexplained interference. These reports have led some to suggest that Bermeja did not completely disappear, but was instead hidden in some way. And this wouldn't be the first time an important location simply vanished. Throughout history, various maps have recorded islands that, years later, were never seen again. Some were explained as temporary reef formations or sandbanks. Others, like Sandy Island in the Pacific, were erased from maps without a convincing justification. But in no other case did the absence of an island cause such profound political and economic impacts as the disappearance of Bermeja. The question remains: does someone still know the truth? In 2014, a former member of the Mexican Navy gave an anonymous interview stating that Bermeja Island was a subject handled with extreme discretion within military forces. According to him, there are classified reports that have never been disclosed to the public, and that the island may not have disappeared due to natural causes, but rather as part of a high-level strategic decision. Another clue comes from former U.S. government officials who claim that internal documents about the Gulf of Mexico contain references to unmapped or discontinued areas, terms used to designate locations whose existence has been deliberately suppressed. These claims have never been officially confirmed, but they suggest the possibility that the story we know about Bermeja has been carefully altered. If the island was erased on purpose, the chances of the truth coming to light are slim. The technology to conceal information has never been more advanced, and if this was one of the greatest geopolitical cover-ups in history, those responsible ensured that no concrete evidence would ever be found. But that doesn't mean the mystery is dead. Interest in Bermeja has only grown in recent years, and the more people search for answers, the harder it becomes to keep the secret forever. The Gulf of Mexico still holds secrets, and perhaps one day someone will uncover a clue that rewrites this story forever. Bermeja Island is one of the greatest modern enigmas. For centuries, its existence was confirmed in maps, cartographic studies, and historical records. But when people tried to find it, it simply wasn't there. No trace, no remains, no convincing explanation. A cartographic error sustained for over 400 years? An impossible geological phenomenon? Or one of the most successful cover-up operations in history? What makes this mystery even more disturbing is that the disappearance of the island wasn't just an insignificant geographic detail. It altered borders, changed the distribution of billion-dollar resources, and directly benefited one of the most powerful nations on the planet. Who really controls information? What else might have been erased from maps and from our memory without us even noticing? This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share, because after all, more voices mean more discoveries.